Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about everybody's favorite edgelord and sentient walking suit of skeleton armor, Ensha, of the Royal Remains, as he's known. He's pretty much just Gideon's henchman. That's like really all there is to him, but we're going to delve really deep, unnecessarily deep, some would say, into him, and maybe the fact that he may or may not be a Berserk reference. I mean, most people who have any knowledge of Berserk probably already know where I'm going with this, but humor me. So before I get into the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, someone pointed out to me that his name is an anagram of the word Ashen. Now that's probably not a reference to the hit indie game and Souls-like Ashen from Annapurna Game Studios, which is kind of funny. I thought they were only a film studio. Anyway, good game. I mean, I think it had a really cool art style as far as Souls-likes that aren't from FromSoft go. I would put it slightly below Neo and Neo 2, but above pretty much most of the other ones that aren't made by FromSoft. Definitely, in my opinion, I preferred it over Fallen Order because Fallen Order was just this bug-filled fucking thing. And I mean, like, I like a lot of Bethesda games, so I don't really, I'm forgiving when it comes to bugs. I mean, when I say Bethesda games, I mainly mean Obsidian games and Oblivion. I'm digressing. But yeah, he's probably not a reference to that game. I just thought I'd mention that because I feel like that game doesn't get enough love. Had a very unique art style, but anyways, another fun theory people have thrown at me is that Ensha is like a reference to the Lord of Hollows ending, and I mean, he does look a bit like a Dark Wraith, as well as, his armor description referring to him as an old lord of like the Lost and the Damned, which probably is a GTA 4 reference. Anyway, though, his armor set refers to him as a lord, and if you consider the term's meaning in Dark Souls 3, what with the Lords of Cinder and how often the word lord with a capital L is used, maybe there is a case to be made for Ensha being the Lord of Hollows or some kind of lord from Dark Souls 3, but I don't really like to subscribe to the whole connected world theory because it's just it's just kind of lazy sometimes because people often ignore like huge parts of the lore that maybe contradict their theory. I mean, I know that's pretty much what Vaddy said in his video, but it's very true, and it's something that irritates me about people who are like, oh no, they're all connected, for sure, it's all connected. And it's like, not really. I mean, like, yeah, you could form together a narrative that they're all connected, but you could just as easily disprove it, you know what I mean? I don't know, anyway, I don't really subscribe to the whole connected world theory. I think that it's, if anything, just a passing reference, maybe to the Lord of Hollows ending or to Dark Souls 3. I don't think it's meant to be taken as anything more than that, if it is even a reference to that. I suppose there's also the off chance that he may be a descendant of Godfrey's in some way due to the fact that his bones are golden and he's called the Royal Remains and all this. But I think that's pretty doubtful, and there's very little to support that, if anything at all, to support that. At the end of the day, though, it's really tough to say what exactly Ensha is, and, for all intents and purposes, he's really just Gideon's henchman when it comes to the events of the game. He was tasked specifically by the gamer-necked Gideon the All-Knowing to find this medallion because Gideon wanted knowledge and probably to find out how to get to the Halleck tree. And while it could just as easily have been Gideon himself, I think it's possible that Ensha was his proxy that led the attack or ordered the attack on the Albinauric village alongside the perfumers and Omen Killer, as Ensha himself, he doesn't really seem like someone who takes half measures. And Gideon doesn't seem like someone who likes to leave a trail behind, so he probably had Ensha order the whole thing or put the whole thing together or even possibly lead the whole thing. It just seems within Gideon's playbook. It makes sense that he would want to distance himself from the raid, although, it didn't work out anyway, as Nefeli pretty much figures it out and ends up getting disowned by him and all that, but that's a whole story for another video. There's also Latenna the Albinauric's account of Gideon killing her wolf or putting him to sleep or whatever. But whether or not Gideon himself was the one who did it is unclear. It seems probably likely that Ensha, his enforcer, did it, but again, Ensha could have led the attack on the village while, Gideon pursued Latenna, who maybe fled. It's really tough to say. The final theory regarding Ensha's identity is, in my opinion, the most likely and probably my favorite out of the three, and it's backed by very little evidence, but, hear me out. But maybe our golden friend here was perhaps the previous Lord of the Dead that Godwin replaced, as Godwin would take precedence being the first dead demigod, and Ensha likely just being a dead noble or perhaps human with some demigod blood maybe, but again, Godwin having more and being a direct descendant from Godfrey and America maybe took precedence and became the new Lord of the Dead, thus deposing this current one, or the current one, Ensha, and making him basically end up being a vagabond, forced to wander about the lands between, and before he ended up as Gideon's henchman. The main and only evidence I really have for him being the former Lord of the Dead is that he's often referred to as Solus in item descriptions, and the only other person I could account for who's referred to as Solus is Godwin, and possibly the other dead demigods who are being housed inside the walking mausoleums. I'm not really sure, but that was my main point of operation for creating that whole little theory. Anyway, moving on. Alright, that's enough background when it comes to Ensha. Now to the whole point of the video, which was me proving that whatever he is or was, I believe he's in some way a intentional or unintentional reference to Berserk. How's that for covering my bases? So Berserk is a super popular and influential manga series developed and created by the late Kentaro Miura, probably butchering that again, you guys know me with my pronunciation, but a very great artist and writer. So Berserk, along with things like Studio Ghibli films, the Lord of the Rings movies and books, the work of George R. R. Martin and Lovecraft, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Twilight Princess, all those things have this huge influence on the world of Elden Ring. Along with the games Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, which inspired the art design from Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. At least to me, Elden Ring looks a lot like Twilight Princess. Maybe I'm the only one here, but I know they didn't invent the art style. It reminds me a lot of Twilight Princess. Anyway, moving on. Berserk in particular has been credited as one of the biggest influences on the Soulsborne series as a whole, from the atmosphere down to the similar themes, and how each game is chock full of references to the popular manga. And as already mentioned, Elden Ring is no exception when it comes to homages to Miura's work. And while there's several overt references to Berserk, like the Guts' great sword, Malekith's armor transformation cutscene to me reminded me of Berserk a bit. Of course, the prisoner starting class, Malenia's helmet. I could go on. The sword graves, even the fucking Erd tree. But I was surprised to see no one really make the comparison of Ensha, who is basically a sentient walking skeleton suit of armor, to Skull Knight, a rather beloved and popular walking skeleton suit of armor. So the Skull Knight is this mysterious ally to Guts, and very little is known about him, and he's an undead warrior, which is to me a bit like Cold Hands from A Song of Ice and Fire, who was turned into Benjen in the show, and then completely wasted. But what is known about our dear friend the Skull Knight is that before he was the Skull Knight, he once wore the Berserker armor that Guts wears, or has the ability to wear. He was once known as the Skull King Gesseric due to the skull-like helmet he wore, which curiously looks a lot like Radahn's armor. The name Gesseric is likely inspired by a real-life king of the Vandals and Alans who sacked Rome in, I believe, 455 AD, and ruled a kingdom that he established all himself. But without going over too much, Gesseric was a warlord who single-handedly conquered the ancient world of the Berserk universe and forged the first empire in human history. He had this massive city built called Midland, and at some point he imprisoned some kind of holy sage who was openly professing the Skull King's sins, which, to basically summarize, he had basically grown corrupt over the years after conquering the world and was charging these high-ass taxes while living in the lap of luxury and turning the city into this, like, cesspool melting pot of, basically like a den of iniquity. So this sage basically prayed night and day despite being tortured all the time in a place called the Tower of Conviction. It's impossible to say how long he was tortured and how long he was praying for, but eventually the gods answered, or God answered, and sent down an angel to basically level the city. Although it was actually more like 4 or 5 angels, because that's how the whole God hand and all that operates. But that's unnecessary for the rest of the story. So I'm a bit spotty on Berserk lore, in case you guys hadn't noticed. So, correct me, obviously, in the comments if I'm getting anything wrong. And I don't know if it was ever confirmed or not that Gesseric and Skull Knight were the same. But either way, I'm moving forward with the idea that he was. So King Gesseric was resurrected, and at least a portion of his soul was bound to a set of skull-like skeleton armor that was forged by the dwarf named Hanar, who forged the Berserker armor that the Skull Knight himself used to wear. which I guess is sort of like Alphonse Elric. You know, he's like this walking suit of armor. I can't believe I didn't think of it up to this point, but I guess altogether unrelated. It's unknown how the Skull Knight was resurrected and subsequently survived, but it's believed that it's just a portion of the Gyseric's will and hatred of the gods that kind of lived on inside the armor, I believe. And he's not really Gyseric the man anymore. He's like this living embodiment of one of his strongest emotions that he's died. That's kind of become something altogether different because, you know, him becoming the Skull Knight could have something to do with the fact he was wearing Berserk armor when he died, or some ancient taboo committed by Flora, who, you know, it's never really confirmed what she did. And again, I'm going too deep into Berserk lore without being adequately refreshed on it, besides skimming. But for whatever the reason, the enigmatic warrior, the Skull Knight, was born, and he would wage a one-man war against demonkind for 1,000 years following this resurrection. And as a suit of sentient skeleton armor, obviously Ensha is some kind of a reference to our friend the Skull Knight. I mean, obviously Ensha is just Gideon's henchman, but the fact that his references and his armor specifically call him a old lord and old king, and the fact that he's this walking suit of bone armor, I mean, come on. Even if it's not an intentional reference, you gotta pick up the parallels there. Anyway, that was really all I had. I didn't really want to linger on too long or rant on too long on this topic, but I ended up going for like 12 minutes, so you know, hopefully that was informative for you guys. Hopefully it wasn't too much of the rant format. I didn't feel like I needed to write like anything for this one. This one felt more like a rant video with, you know, with the help of some notes, and I appreciate all the feedback you guys have been giving. Sorry about the couple days where there was no uploads. I was experiencing technical difficulties, but things are looking pretty good over here now, though. We're all set up and ready to go, so that I'm gonna get back to work on that demigods video real soon, and it's almost done. I had those technical difficulties come up and a couple other things, but the video is definitely in the progress of being made. This is just a little idea I had while I was taking a shower, and I was like, oh, this would be a good little rant video to make, and I pieced it together, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. As usual, if you liked it, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. If I got anything wrong, or if you have any counter arguments or opinions or anything to add, or just anything at all, feel free to comment. I always love that. If you like my videos and my general format and style, I would suggest subscribing. That would be really cool. I always enjoy new subscribers. You guys are always welcome. But I hope you found the video informative. The next one will be out either tomorrow or the next day. We're back to the regular scheduled programming. Have a good day. I'll see you next time. Peace.